I want to tell you guys about a murderer, a scumbag who was executed by the state of Missouri today. His name was Michael Tisius. Michael Tisius was a callous, ruthless, manipulative, calculative murderer who murdered 2 jail guards back in the year 2000 in the state of Missouri. And it all began with Michael Tisius serving a 30-day jail sentence. And while he was in jail, he made friends with his cellmate. His name was Vance. And Vance told him, "Hey, man, why don't you help me get out of here? Help me get out of here, man. Break me out of here, man. I'm going to be stuck here for 50 years. Help me out, man. You just got a 30-day sentence. You're going to be out of here in no time, man. Help me out." So after Michael Tisius gets released after serving 30 days in jail, instead of just living in freedom, pursuing opportunities, and bettering his life, he decides that he was going to go back to the jail and break out this guy, Vance. Free this guy, this scumbag named Vance. So he meets up with Vance's girlfriend, and they decide that they're going to execute this plan. So what they started to do was visit the jail to deliver stuff to Vance. They delivered cigarettes, I think socks, things like that. And they did this several times to the point where the guards really started getting comfortable around them. And when they saw Michael Tisius, they didn't really think that he was going to do anything weird. Although there was one night where Tisius and Vance's girlfriend popped up and they were acting very erratic to the point where the guard who was present in the jail that night made a police report about it. One night, they go to the jail and they start talking to the 2 guards. The 2 guards were Leon Egley and Jason Acton. And they were doing small talk for about 10 minutes. 10 minutes is a good enough time to get someone comfortable in a conversation. So they got their guards down, and they did not know that Tisius was armed with a .22 caliber rifle. This is the reason why police officers get very on edge around people who act suspicious and people who don't comply with simple orders. Tisius pulls out this .22 caliber pistol and immediately shoots Jason Acton in the head. Leon Egley, seeing his partner just getting executed, runs up to his partner's body. Tisius opened fire on Egley, and Egley dropped to the floor. Tisius then proceeds to look for the keys in the jailer's office. As Tisius was walking around this office looking for the keys, a hand grabs his ankle. It was the hand of Leon Egley. Leon Egley was still alive, gasping for air, and he was gripping onto Tisius's ankle. And it was just his last moment of life. His last moment of life. And Tisius, in cold blood, points his pistol down right on Leon Egley's face and shoots him again, murdering him. And that's why this scumbag was rightfully sentenced to death. 23 years later, today, Tisius was finally executed. And guess who was coming to his defense? This should not surprise anyone. The Catholic Church. The Catholic Church came to this bastard's defense. And I want to read to you guys what the Apostolic Nuncio, Archbishop Christophe Pierre, wrote to the governor of Missouri, Mike Parson. The gravity of Mr. Tisius's crime must be acknowledged, as must the demand of justice that he be punished. Nevertheless, Governor, the Holy Father appeals to you for clemency on behalf of Mr. Tisius solely on the basis of his and our own shared humanity. Our faith teaches us that every human life is made in the image and likeness of God. And Tisius did not give a damn about the image and likeness of God in the two guards that he murdered. Tisius did not give a damn about our shared humanity when he murdered these two men in cold blood. And there was an article that was published recently by the Huffington Post trying to stoke up sympathy for this bastard, trying to get people to feel sorry for him. Oh, feel sorry for Mr. Tisius. Why? Well, because Mr. Tisius was somewhat mentally impaired and he was easily manipulated because this Vance guy in his cell manipulated him. Well, Mr. Tisius manipulated those two guards. Mr. Tisius was calculative enough that he manipulated the guards in the jail because he was coming for several days. He was visiting the jail, delivering goods to Vance, to his former cellmate, making them feel comfortable around him. He went to the guards the night of the murder. He talked with them for 10 minutes. That's a long conversation. Especially considering the fact that this was between a former inmate, a jail inmate, and two guards. 10 minutes. That's a considerable amount of time. That's enough time to make someone feel comfortable. And he got those two guys to feel relaxed around him before he murdered them. He was a manipulative person. And you know what? He was able to manipulate all of the people who feel sorry for him. Oh, he did artwork while he was on death row. Oh, yeah, he did artwork. Oh, he drew a drawing of the Virgin Mary. And he sent it to some lady in the Catholic Church over there in Missouri. Oh, feel sorry for me. Look, I made a drawing, a portrait of the Virgin Mary. Look how Catholic I am. Look how wonderful, how religious and pious I am. And the Huffington Post, on their article, they had a photograph of Tisius in front of some artwork that he did on a wall. It was some mural art. And they said, oh, look, he did wall art. Oh, he did wall art. He did, like he's some kind of a child. Like, oh, look, he did a drawing. He did a painting. Like, the guy did first-degree murder. He executed a plan of premeditated, calculative murder. And we're supposed to look at him like he's some toddler in special education. And I noticed this. I noticed that a lot of Americans fall for this trick. A lot of Americans fall for this. They love this picture of the guy who looks like trash, who looks like a criminal, but he's a good father. Oh, Americans love that crap. They fall for it. Believe me, I know. I grew up in the state of California. I saw this type of crap. All these people who loved rap music, and they would watch the rap music videos, and you could see these rappers looking like absolute thugs and criminals. And they said, well, he doesn't mean he's a bad person. He looks like a thug, but doesn't mean he's a bad person. You can't judge a book by its cover. They love this kind of bullshit. And because they fall for that sort of trick, criminals play to that. Criminals appeal to that mentality. Oh, he looks like trash. He looks like a criminal, but he's a good person. He does artwork on the wall. Nobody gives a shit about Leon Egley and Jason Acton. No one gives a damn about these two men who were murdered in cold blood. No one gives a damn about that moment where Leon was just grasping on in his last moment of breathing, in his last moment of life, and he held on to this man's ankle as if to ask for mercy, as if to get him to change his mind, something. But nobody gives a shit. Because a lot of people, I shouldn't say nobody, because a lot of people agree with the execution of this scumbag. But there are also enough people who don't give a damn about justice. Because they are of the ideology of the criminal mind. The ideology of criminality. What do I mean by this? Well, let's look at, for example, Islamic terrorism. In the world of Islamic terrorism, you have your ideologues and you have your imams. You have your scholars and your intellectuals. You have the preachers who come and they preach jihad. They encourage terrorism. You have the intellectuals who come along and they make arguments in favor for terrorism. You have then the apologists who come along and they make excuses for terrorism. Well, you have the same exact thing for criminals here in the United States. You have, for example, in the Islamic world, you have people who make nasheed to produce music that encourages terrorism. They make music called nasheeds, Islamic music, that encourages terrorism, murder for the cause of Allah and jihad and Muhammad and the Quran. They even encourage taking booty, stealing stuff, pillaging your enemies, all this stuff. You have the same exact thing for the criminal world in the United States. You have people who produce rap music, which encourages criminal behavior. You have people making music videos that encourage criminal behavior. There's a rapper named Playboy Cardi, I think, and he has a music video showing him and a bunch of other people literally robbing a store. I mean, it's acting, but still, they are robbing a store in this music video, encouraging that behavior as if it's something that's cool and hip and exciting and exhilarating. So you have that, right? Just like the terrorists have the nasheed, criminals have their own music. They have rap music that encourages criminal behavior. You also have metal music, which is also disgusting in many ways. And you also have intellectuals here in the United States, intellectuals who make excuses for criminal behavior. They say, well, it's a lack of education. That's why criminals do the things that they do. Lack of education, or they had bad childhoods. They did the same exact thing for this Michael Tisius guy. He had a bad childhood. He was mentally impaired. He was easily manipulated. They make excuses for bad behavior, evil behavior, I should say, for this case. And then you have the people who come along and they make arguments that that make the criminals the victims. Right, so they look to Michael Brown, or they look to all these people who get shot by cops, who rightfully get shot by cops, and they say, "Oh, look, he didn't deserve to be shot by a police officer because it was the fault of the officer. The officer should have de-escalated things. He should have de-escalated everything. It's the officer's fault. It's the officer's fault. It's not the criminal's fault that the criminal got shot." But then you actually look at the story and you find, well, the criminal was armed with a knife. The criminal had a weapon on him. The criminal was acting very violent towards the officer. The criminal maybe was trying to grab the officer's gun. The criminal stole the taser of the officer. I think this was the case of Rashard Brooks, where the guy stole the taser of the officer and tried to use it on the officer. The officer then fired upon Rashard Brooks and killed him. And they'll say, well, the officer should not have done that. It's the officer's fault. So you have your provocateurs who make the criminals look like the victims. You have the intellectuals who make excuses for the criminals. And then you have the music that encourages criminal behavior. You literally have the same exact thing for Islamic terrorism. So the criminal world is not just people doing crimes. The criminal world also has this entire group of people who encourage evil, destructive, and bad actions and behaviors. And that's the kind of thing that you see. And this is why, in the case of Tisius, this is why jailers and people who work in people who work in police departments have to be armed. Why? Because of maniacs like this. Not too long ago, there was a case in Dearborn, Michigan, where some Muslim guy went into, and this goes hand in hand with what I'm saying about the criminal ideology. Some guy went into a police station in Dearborn, Michigan, armed with a pistol. Luckily, the pistol started to malfunction, and one of the police officers in the police station unloaded an entire clip on this guy, killing him. the family then launched a lawsuit against the Dearborn police, saying that the police officers were at fault. Why? Because they should have de-escalated the situation. The family got a lawyer who has an Islamic name, so I think that tells us something about the ideology of such a lawyer. And this lawyer made the argument that it was the fault of the officers, not the guy who wanted to murder a police officer or multiple police officers, because the officers should have de-escalated the situation. It's like, well, how? It's as if it's the problem of the police officer that somebody comes in with a gun. It's not the problem of the guy who comes in with the gun. It's the problem of the officer. It's like, well, it's the officer's problem, and he should have done something other than kill the bastard. And that's another thing that these criminal ideologues do. They always try to make it the fault of the officer. They always try to make it the officer's problem. It's not the officer's problem that this guy that this guy comes in with a pistol and the pistol malfunctions. That's not his problem. The problem with the officer is that he has to defend himself against such scumbags, and he needs to do what he needs to do to defend himself. Another thing that these bastards do, these ideologues do, is that they'll say, well, the criminal had a knife and the officer should not have shot him. It's like, well, so now the weapon of choice dictates how someone should defend him or herself. Well, that's a bunch of nonsense. That's just a bunch of absolute nonsense. If you are law enforcement, you need to have the edge over the criminals, not the criminals dictating how the officers enforce the law or defend themselves. There was a case recently, I don't know where, somewhere in America, where there was a criminal who was being confronted by officers over some issue, and this guy said, oh, I got a gun. Well, when you tell officers, I have a gun, they are rightfully going to be very, very nervous, and they are going to act accordingly. So he says, I have a gun on me. And the officers then begin to try to arrest him. And then as they're trying to slap the handcuffs on him, he starts to spit on the officers. The officers pin him on the floor. You can overhear the guy's girlfriend screaming, why you pin him down like that? Why you pin him down like that? And the officer says, he just spat on me. Yeah, but he didn't hit you.
So they're confirming it right now, but based on your tattoos, we know who you are, and you do have an open warrant for your arrest. So if that's confirmed, then we'll be taking you down to jail tonight.
That's when Devin says, quote, can y'all back up so I can get my gun off me? Moments later, a struggle begins.
Okay, well, can y'all back up so I can get my gun off me?
Where's your gun at?
Don't worry about what I'm saying.
No.
If y'all,
At this point, no.
Relax. We're not gonna fight with the gun in the boat.
No, that's what I'm telling you.
I know. Hey.
Hey, y'all, we can.
1040.
That's all right.
He's not, his arm is out.
Give me your freaking hand. Down.
Oh, this is fun.
Video shows the struggle continue as Devin spits on officers multiple times.
Don't keep spitting on us.
I'm gonna keep spitting, bro. You slam my hand on the ground.
I got it on. Let's go in here.
How you talking about resisting?
Get the
Spitting on you, dude.
Why is you?
Cause there ain't no gun.
No, get up off him like that. Why the you on him like that?
Because he's still fighting.
He's not fighting. He is on the ground.
Ma'am,
You mean he's fighting?
please stop.
He's not fighting.
He just spit on me. You have it on video.
He's not. Okay, he spit, but he ain't fighting. Why the
I got a gun.
Why is you on him like that? Get the up off him.
Devin.
Well, spitting technically is spitting actually constitutes as assault. When you spit on someone, you are assaulting them. And God knows what sort of diseases is in your spit. So no one should have to tolerate such an assault like that. And the officer had every right to pin the schmuck on the floor. He is law enforcement. He has a right to defend himself, and he has a right not to be spat upon. So if you spit on him, best believe your ass is gonna be on the floor. Bottom line. And so, but that's the thing. They want to make it where They want to make it where the criminal dictates everything. That is the ideology of the criminal mind. They want to make it so the criminal dictates everything. Well, the criminal spat on you, but you don't have the right to pin him on the floor after he spits on you, because it's just spit at the end of the day. It's like, well, how about I spit on you and see how you like it? Or they'll say, well, the criminal didn't have a gun. He had a knife, so why did you shoot him? Well, a knife can be actually more dangerous than a gun in close quarters. And you can kill a lot of people with a knife. Obviously, it's a very deadly weapon. So if you're going to pull out a knife, the officer better be prepared enough that he has an edge over the criminal. So, yes, a pistol is definitely warranted in such a situation. But they want to make it so that the criminal determines the rules. The criminals determine how things go. Well, if the criminal has a knife, then the officer should be freaking, I don't know, Jason Bourne all of a sudden. Which is just a bunch of nonsense. But there is an ideology of criminality that is percolating the minds of the United States, and it's spreading like a cancer, and it's trying to establish itself just like Islam has invaded societies in the past. So what Islam has for terrorism, what the Islamic terrorist world has for itself, the criminal world has for itself in the United States. Music, ideologues, provocateurs, people who make excuses for criminal actions. But anyway, thankfully this scumbag was executed, justice was served, and the Catholic Church defending this guy is not surprising at all, given the fact that the Catholic Church will defend the criminals who are in the ranks of its own priesthood. I'm talking about the molesters. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.